Welcome back to another week of political conversations. This time we're shooting from Nyeri. We are at Ruare Central, and yes, I noticed some people pointed out that we didn't talk about our chai and mandazi last week. We are still doing very good chai and mandazi, and as you can see how cold it is, we are also doing some very good soup. So, karibu Ruare, whenever you're in Nyeri. Today I want to talk about patriotism. It's a concept I have been trying to explain to people, and there's a certain element of resistance and sometimes a hostility when you bring up the issue of patriotism, until I had to actually go into researching why we as Kenyans seem to have a problem with patriotism. I say this because there are very few countries in the world where you will see a concentrated, focused effort to undermine the government of the day, seeking for the government of the day to fail. There seems to be a disconnect in most people's minds of the understanding that if the government of the day fails, then your country is actually going to fail. And we have very good examples. We have a country called Egypt, where the minute the government collapsed, we ended up with all manner of sectarianism. Egypt, where people we used to hear about it, how people were getting free healthcare. I mean, the standard of living there was very, very high. However, their politics was very bad. Because of that, a decision was made to overturn the political establishment of the day. Now we have what we see today. Very many parts of the world, people have gone after the political establishment of the day, and in the process ended up destroying the country. I am a very strong proponent of the fact that politics is seasonal. Today, those who do not agree with President William Ruto have 4 years to organize themselves and try and remove him as president. So why would you want to destroy the country because of this 4-year period? Why not wait and see whether you're going to be able to remove him in 2027? And if he can't, for sure he will leave in 2032. This is where my idea of patriotism comes from. Our country is permanent. Our politics are seasonal. You could have a president who you liked who has left. You could have a president you wanted who is not in office, right? You could have a president who is in office who you don't like. Or you could even have a president who is in office who you like, but he's going to leave. We cannot make, this is what wise people said, you do not make permanent decisions based on temporary situations. Our politics is temporary. The longest cycle is 10 years of an administration. Then that administration has to leave and another one comes in. So we cannot be undermining and sabotaging our country because of a seasonal cycle of politics, unless we do not understand what patriotism is. So I did my research, and this is what I found out. Part of the reason why our country and Kenyans as a whole, especially our generation and the people older than us, have a problem with patriotism is because of Moi. We had a president called Daniel Toroitich arap Moi, and he ingrained in us the concept of patriotism. But there's a feeling that the patriotism he was selling to us was for his own self-preservation. So today, anytime you talk to people about patriotism, they think you're saying that for your own selfish interest, because that was a connection. Every time you have to accept during Moi's time, when he was president for the 24 years, this country had very, very patriotic people. We had people who used to, just stand with the country. But then there was a bit of confusion. As they were standing with the country, they were standing with the president. And there was a very blood line between the country and the president at that time. So the assumption was, or the assumption still is, that if you're defending your country, you're defending the president. Because at a certain point, they were connected. Today, they're not. Today, we have a country and a political system. And the most important thing is for Kenyans to understand the difference between the two. Our country is growing. It grows every single day. It never retrogresses, it never moves back. The fact that you had a child who was a year old last year, is 2 years old this year, by the next election, that child will be 6 years old. By the next election, they will be 11. This is a country you need to be thinking about, and that is why my idea of patriotism, that's where my concept of patriotism comes from. You need to do everything possible to make sure there's a country for that child to live in. Let's not be like those two women we hear about in the Bible who went to King Solomon. And because one of them had lost their child and the other one still had a child, the one who had lost their child insisted that even this other child should be killed. Ili watoshane. Sometimes when I listen to some of our politicians, especially the ones who lost and who wanted to lead the country and did not make it, you get the impression that they're telling us, then let's destroy this country to Toshane. I didn't get it, so even that person should not get it. I lost an election. I lost the last election. But I am not going to destroy Nyeri town constituency because I didn't win. We have an election in 4 years. God willing, all things remaining constant, I'll go back to the people of Nyeri and ask them, do you think I can represent you again? Why would I want to destroy Nyeri over the 4-year period while I want to go and represent them again in 4 years? Why would you want to destroy Kenya if you want to lead it in 4 years? So when I see, for example, my brothers in Azimio just pushing us to boycott paying taxes. Now, the irony of it is that Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, I suspect to some extent our SG current, I don't know whether he's still current or he's pending, but our disputed SG Kioni, the Jubilee Party, is paid by the Jubilee Party, which is funded by the government, funded by our taxes. These are the gentlemen who are telling us to stop paying taxes. Their lifestyle is sustained, their security is sustained by our taxes. They want us to stop paying taxes. But they will not sacrifice what it is that they are getting for the government for it. This is my problem. This is a problem I have with the conversation about where this country needs to go. Some of the people who are holding it are being duplicitous. Of course, the government is not perfect, but I give them benefit of the doubt. They haven't even finished a year in office. This is the time they're having a first budget, right? And of course, it is a challenging budget. A fuel has gone up. I bought fuel for 195 shillings a litre today. So, man, this is not easy. But, and I'll use this as my last conversation as a wrap up. This last week, we lost a very close family member. And during the Mashakaya, I met some friends I haven't seen in a long time. And one of them was very upset to hear that I was supporting the finance bill. So we started chatting, and I asked him, boss, how many Kenyans do we have who are registered taxpayers, registered voters? 22 million. Meaning this country has 22 million people who are over 18 years old who have registered as voters. How many people are registered with KRA? Approximately 7 million. Approximately half of those people file nil returns. So our taxes, the taxpayer bracket, voluntary taxes, is 3.5 million people out of 50 million. While, on the other hand, we want to have free education, free healthcare, we want to have good roads, we want to have a good communication infrastructure, we want our counties to work, we want our government to work. And by the government, and most of us have a relative in government. So when we attack government, most of us have a relative in government in some way or the other. Government has close to 700,000 people who depend on it for their living, right? So when we say we don't want to pay taxes, we don't like this finance bill because it is actually very, very, very strenuous. The question we need to ask ourselves is, what are we willing to sacrifice if we want to live, to reduce these taxes? What are we willing to stop getting from government? Do we reduce the police population ratio so that we have less policemen? Do we reduce our army? Do we, and I said some time back, do we stop building tarmac roads and just do maram, right? Do we want to reduce the housing for public servants? Do we want to reduce our prisons, our police stations? What do we want to reduce? Do you want to reduce our hospitals? Do you want to scrap our county governments? Because all these things require money, and the only money we can get in our country is from our taxes. So yes, I have at no point defended the finance bill as being good taxes. But I said Winston Churchill said there's nothing like good taxes. What I defend is the fact that if we want to continue enjoying the benefits that we get, then we're going to have to pay for it. Now, what we should be insisting on is an accountability matrix of where those taxes go. This should be the conversation. When we started the conversation about the finance bill, what we should have been talking about is that we want to know where every shilling has gone. Now, that is an argument we can have. Because once we decide we want to know whether every shilling has gone, we can start saying, okay, remove these ones, we don't want these ones. People are saying they don't want housing because of the housing levy. But do they even understand how it works? So there's a bit of a conversation and candidness we need to have with ourselves as a country. Not just about taxes, but about patriotism. I want my country to survive, no matter who is leading it. My responsibility is to do two things. One, to do everything I can to add value to his ability to lead this country so that we keep going. Two, to ensure I'm not sabotaging or undermining what is being done. I'm holding this country, this government accountable. I'm positively criticizing it to build rather than to destroy. If you wake up every day to look for the mistakes that this government is making so that you can expand them and use them to show how we are not going anywhere as a country, and you call yourself a Kenyan, you should be very ashamed of yourself. And that is true. Let me repeat that again. If you wake up every day to look for the mistakes that have been made in this country, to expand them, and use that as an example of why we are not going anywhere as a country, you should be very ashamed of yourself. What you should do every day is figure out how to fix that problem because it affects all of us. My last word on this one, I said it some time back. Unless there is a place you can stand and be safe as the country crumbles around you, you should be rooting for this country to be successful. Because the success of this country is your success. The success of your business, success of your children's education, safety of your elderly parents if they're around, if they're elderly. It is the safety and the success of everything around us. That is what we should be rooting for. We cannot be waking up every day to pray and hope that our country will fail. That is just wrong. Anyway, I'm done. Karibuni Ruare kama kawaida. As we said, chai na mandazi kwa wingi, soup kwa wingi, pilau kwa wingi. We're doing our part to grow our country. We are farming, we've got onions and stuff. You do your part wherever you are. God bless you. God bless Kenya. Thank you.